the depreciation is a big part of the process. And when you sell and you elect not to do a 1031 exchange, you have to recapture all of that depreciation, which can be 50% of the equity that you have in there.
Hi, this is Garrett Sutton, and you're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
Welcome to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. Are you trying to get out of debt, invest, or just not sure where to start? Then this is the place for you. We discuss different ways to get out of the rat race and build your wealth. Join us on this wild ride to financial freedom.
Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavaggioni, and today's guest is Alex Olson. So, Alex, I am super excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to start this off the same way I start every podcast episode, and we want to know more about you. So if you could share a little bit about yourself, share your story. Who is Alex Olson?
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I could go back and do a bunch of crazy details. I think obviously the reason why a lot of people are probably listening to your show, entrepreneurship, right? I grew up, my dad was self-employed. He was a farmer, actually a hog farmer and a commercial row crop farmer. And so with that, he was working for himself his whole life. And I didn't. When I first graduated college, I went into the corporate world and had a job there for about 15 years, but I was always looking for something different, something that I could feel more accomplished with, number one, and number two, make a lot more money, or at least have the opportunity to make a lot more money than a 9-to-5 job. And we ended up building our dream house before I had left the corporate world. And how that really worked was I'd saved up every single bonus I got, every single extra cash we had. I saved all of that, knowing that, hey, look, I had a dream of building a decently nice house that was customized to our needs. So we built a dream house on the lake. And with that, I learned a lot through the process. I learned about financing. It's not just like I'm going out buying a house. It was more like I was going out, I had to get a construction loan, had to learn how banks work, had to meet contractors, had to learn all of the ins and outs of building a house. And at the end of the day, it turns out we'd done a really good job of building our house on and under budget. And we had a bunch of equity already built up because we'd done a good job of buying the vacant land at a certain price and done a good job of building the house at a certain price. We had a lot of equity in that. And so afterwards, it's like, man, I've always wanted to do real estate investing. My dad was a farmer. He owned a lot of his own farmland. So there was some kind of tie to that where he knew how to go out and get a bank loan, but he didn't have any idea on real estate. He actually shied away from real estate. And so I was like, okay, how can I make this happen? So I went out and got a home equity line of credit. I bought a 5-plex. I bought a duplex. I bought 4 single-family homes with a dream of, oh my gosh, I'm going to turn all these into mega millionaire Airbnbs here in the urban core of Kansas City. And then the pandemic hit, and my Airbnbs went to crap, which I understand why. And I lost my job, which was actually a blessing. Because right before that, about 6 months before I lost my job, I decided to go out and get my real estate license. I fell in love with buying properties, not just the financial aspect of it, but just the negotiating, pretending to be an attorney as you're negotiating on contracts, meeting new people, buying them in amazing locations. So I was lucky enough to have my real estate license, got fired. Then I went into a brokerage firm where I met Logan Freeman. I don't know if you know him, but he's a big capital raiser in the real estate space. And he and I had a passion for working with buyers in Kansas City. And we found out there's a lot of people that are on 1031 exchange deadlines, which is part of real estate and allows people to really grow their wealth. And so with that, we created this niche of helping people that are in this 1031 exchange bind deadline and finding them and getting them over the hump of the fears of, man, it takes a long time to close these out. I don't know what to buy. I need cash flow. I need X, Y, and Z. And so we help them in that process. And so that's what we focus on now as a real estate brokerage firm in Kansas City, is helping people grow their wealth, whether through a 1031 exchange or not. But how can you go from 1 unit or 2 units or 8 units to 10 to 16 to 20 to 100? And that's really what we focus on now.
Awesome, Alex. That's some background, man. And what a way to get into real estate, right? It was almost like you already knew you enjoyed it, but then your hand was forced, right, when the pandemic hit. What I find interesting, though, is you started to realize the power of real estate when you were building your own home, right? Got the land, had the home developed and built. And then once everything was said and done, you realized how much equity you had. And it's, whoa, hang on a second here. There's something here. And that's, to me, that's what it sounds like, pushed you towards wanting to invest in real estate and look at that further down. So that's pretty awesome, man. Now, is there a particular reason why you choose Kansas City as your market, or is that where you live?
Yeah, so I was blessed. Come to find out, I had no idea really, but blessed that Kansas City is a pretty good cash flowing market and pretty popular with investors from that perspective. And it's a growing city. I actually moved down here. I'm from Nebraska originally, and I moved to Kansas City because I wanted a bigger city and something that seemed more progressive. This was right around when I moved down here was 15, 16, 17 years ago, right around the urban core revitalization of a lot of these Midwestern towns, decent sized cities. And Kansas City had a lot going on. They were building what was then called the Sprint Center. And oh my gosh, we're going to try and get an NBA team. And oh my gosh, we're going to do all these other great things. And so that really drew me to one of the reasons why it drew me to Kansas City. And yeah, it just turns out it was a great cash flowing market.
Awesome. So what made you like really start looking into and get into 1031 exchanges? Was it a personal experience you had doing your first one, or what was it that attracted you to that?
It was that a 1031 exchange buyer was really underserviced. And I stumbled into that because one, my mentor, Logan Freeman, he was working with these folks, and they have, if you're on a 1031 exchange deadline, you have a lot of money that you either have to buy a new property with, or you're going to take the tax consequence of that. And most people don't want to take that tax consequence. So I looked at that as an opportunity that you've got a buyer that needs to buy. And I have at least what I feel like is an expertise in knowing and helping them buy something because I've bought real estate before on my own, and just knowing the area. And I also have a background in finance. And so those kind of things, like, man, this is like a perfect fit for me because these people are on a deadline and they have to identify 3 properties within a certain amount of time. I don't have a problem cold calling and finding sellers and owners and that kind of thing, and working with property managers and getting it all lined up, that it seemed like it was going to be a good fit from a real estate brokerage standpoint as well.
Yeah, so definitely saw like a need in the market and just started attacking it, right? So, I mean, I think that's one of the things that all successful entrepreneurs do, right? Is like you find out what the problem is, and then you offer a solution to that problem. It's not so much oh, hey, I just want to do 1031s because they're cool and can save a lot of money. So no, that's great, but I'm doing 1031 exchange. I'm helping you find properties for your 1031 exchange because of the actual benefits that you get from it. And a lot of people aren't educated on that, and they don't get to truly understand what they will save with that tax burden. And I think part of the problem is, like I said, is that education piece. Like a lot of people just don't know. And they're like, hey, I'm selling one of my investment properties and wanting to get into something bigger. And they wind up paying all these taxes on that first property that they sold. And now I can't buy the bigger property I wanted because Uncle Sam took a third of it. So that's another key thing there is, hey, you can get into something bigger and better now because you're not giving up this large chunk of your real estate profits.
Yeah, that's a big thing. You already touched on it a lot, but yeah, people, obviously they don't do it all the time. A lot of people, some people, don't get me wrong, some people might only do it once, maybe twice in a lifetime. And it seems daunting. And then you also don't know, you're assuming I only pay taxes on a certain percent, right? It's only 20% on the profit I make. It's a lot more than that because the profit, people don't understand or forget that depreciation is a big part of the process. And when you sell and you elect not to do a 1031 exchange, you have to recapture all of that depreciation, which can be 50% of the equity that you have in there. And you've got to plan for that. And why pay the taxes now when you can defer them? It's all a case by case basis, but why pay taxes now when you can defer them and continue to get all those same tax benefits?
Yep. 100%. 100%. All right, Alex. So now with, what you've built right now, what are some of the services that you offer?
So our core services is helping just like a traditional commercial real estate brokerage. So we will source, but our focus is on working with buyers. If you go out to a larger firm, typically in the $1 to $10 million space, those brokers are all after trying to get listings. We definitely will do listings, but our main focus is working on buyers trying to find what they need in the marketplace. Now, the reason why a lot of other brokerage firms don't work with buyers in multifamily space of this size is because the classic saying in our world is buyers are liars. There's 100,000 buyers out there and they all want to buy. It's up to us as a broker to really decide where we're going to spend our time. Because if everybody wants to buy, there's not enough time to work with everybody. So you got to find the ones that are truly active in buying. So we take a very white glove service to it where we have an off-market marketplace where all of our off-market deals are on. Sounds weird, but all of our off-market deals are on this marketplace. You can go on there. You can see all of the income, expenses, photos, etc. of these deals that nobody else really has access to. And you can evaluate properties that way. We're going to help you line up your property manager, your attorney, your insurance company. Insurance is a huge aspect in the commercial real estate space. Then the other piece, of course, is making sure it gets closed out. I say this all the time. Anybody can put a property under contract, but only the select brokers actually know how to close those out. So there's a big negotiating piece when you're a buyer that you have to overcome, whether it's education on your inspection, whether it's simply just pricing expectations. And so we walk through a white glove experience, all of that process. And then you add on top the 1031 exchange, there's all those service vendors too, right? You've got a qualified intermediary, which is required for 1031 exchange that we refer those out to. Then you've got your replacement properties that we're going to help you identify in this market. But there's also other opportunities outside of this market that we help them with too, because some people are like, I want to be completely passive. So we help them find passive opportunities for 1031 exchange. And so it's very consultative. We're really making sure that they get across the finish line, dot all their I's and cross all their T's when it comes to commercial real estate in the 1031 world.
Awesome. Yeah, it's because it's not as simple as it sounds like, oh, sell the one property and then buy into something bigger. There's a whole lot that goes along with the 1031 exchange. And I've had a couple episodes that go pretty in depth into that. And the fact that you kind of put the process right there at their fingertips and give them like an all-in-one solution. So it does take a lot of that burden off of those buyers. So I think that's pretty huge. And I think that's something you don't see too much out there. You'll see the qualified enemy, I can't even say the word, that'll sit there and hold the funds, but you don't see too much, this full service that you guys are offering as well. That is pretty interesting too, that you have this offline marketplace to find the off-market deals, which is pretty cool, but it's almost like its own on the marketplace that's off the market. I'm a little confused by that, but yeah, I get what you're saying, man. So that's pretty cool.
The funny thing is, you talk about it and say, hang on a second, that sounds like it's listed. I'm like, I know it sounds like it's listed. It's not. But how we've developed it is these people are members, so to speak. They sign up. It's just like if you're going and say, hey, look, sure, I want to be on your market, your deal flow list. We actually have more of a little bit more sophisticated. So most people aren't used to that. They're used to maybe a broker having a blast that goes out and maybe there's a Google Drive link with a couple properties on it kind of thing.
Pocket listings and
pocket listings. But we try to add a little bit extra level to that. We actually even spend a lot of money with the seller. It's our money, but we're spending time with the sellers and money on getting drone footage, if they allow us to, of the exterior, getting actually a photo guy in there to do a 3D tour of it, setting up the 3D camera. So that way, a lot of these out-of-state guys, even the local guys and gals, you don't even have to go into the units and set up a tour. We've got all that for you. So we can do a lot more volume and help a lot more investors than just 5 or 6 a year. We're helping 40, 50 people a year.
Yeah. So that essentially it's a way that they can keep their property off the market. But if the right buyer comes along, they're like, yeah, hey, we'll sell. I believe the right price will get anybody to sell. If somebody came to my house and said, hey, we'll give you $2 million for this house when it's worth about like almost 1.2, I'd probably take the 2 million and say, here you go. But that's it. There is a price where people will say, okay, let's do this. But it's interesting that because you have this marketplace set up to where it's basically a lot of the work is now done for these buyers, and they're just looking for a place to move this money, right? To not inherit that tax burden that comes with it, because it is a short time frame, right? You have 6 months, you have 45 days to identify the 3 properties, right? And then you have 6 months to actually close on them. So this definitely helps shorten that time frame for a lot of folks. Attention, fellow real estate investors. I know you're tired of ineffective marketing strategies that leave your lead generation feeling like a bust. Well, I've got a great solution for you. I've teamed up with Ballpoint Marketing to bring you a fresh approach to growing your business. With their handwritten direct mail marketing, your business will stand out from the crowd. Their amazing writing machines will craft personalized messages for each of your potential clients, making a lasting impression and increasing the likelihood of them responding to your message. They even make pen smudge marks to add to the authenticity. And for those of you that are driving for dollars, one of their most popular offers are handwritten door hangers. Placed directly on the front door, these door hangers show a potential seller how serious you are. With Ballpoint Marketing, you can trust their marketing strategy will be both effective and unique, just like your real estate business. Use my coupon code AVGJOE for an exclusive discount. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grow your real estate business and generate leads. Click the link in my bio for more. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Mike Cav from Average Joe Finances. Just want to talk to you today about Prep Agent. If you're interested in learning how to become a real estate agent and being able to pass the test on your first try, check out Prep Agent at www.prepagent.com. Use code AVGJOE, that's Average Joe, AVGJOE, to get an additional 20% off. Let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, it really does. And we also take a look at, there's so much that we try to put into it from a consultative process, because there's so many people that maybe own a duplex or a fourplex and they've owned it for 10 years and they've got a ton of equity in it, whether that's been paid down over that 10-year, the principal payment. And then the other side of it is appreciation. So they've got a ton of equity. They're maybe only getting 2, 3, 4% on their original equity that they put into it. Whereas if you sell that in 1031 exchange into you go from a fourplex to a 10 units or 15, now look at all that cash flow you've got going on. And that's all just through doing one 1031 exchange. And we've got, of course, case studies on, how that works. We've got one guy that we sold his 4 fourplexes for him, which was about $1.6 million. He partnered with another guy that was also selling his 10 units. They ended up partnering together with their 1031 exchange. This is all through 1031 exchange to buy 92 units for $7.5 million. So he took his 1.6 and got into 92 units in a Class A market. That's the power of being creative with it, also being really prepared. So we helped him with the timing of all that. And you can go from a couple of fourplexes to almost 100 units in 6 months if you do it correctly.
Yeah, that's huge. And the thing is, too, they also had a lot of that principal paid down. Their operating expenses are going to be a lot less when it comes to how much of it is bank financed, right? So that's pretty huge, especially if cash flow is what you're going for, which most people are. Cash flow is king, right? Because that's what replaces your income. That's what allows you the financial freedom to move on and do something else. I definitely think that is huge. Alex, with everything that you do with your company, so you're definitely focused on helping buyers succeed. What would you say are some of the most valuable resources that you guys have that help the buyers?
Great question. So from a buyer's perspective, the first thing you got to do when you're working with us is you got to understand the Kansas City market. And every real estate market is different. We know that. Most buyers know that. But There's a lot of real estate markets where you can only buy in certain pockets, whether it's urban core or suburban, and you got a lot of markets to stay away from. And then you also have a lot of markets too where maybe they're not very landlord friendly, or they have high taxes or different geopolitical issues. So you've got to understand the Kansas City market, which has no real landlord restrictions. It also has pretty low taxes. So those are two good things. Then the third thing you got to understand is that most submarkets in Kansas City are good places to invest. You get a lot of questions like, is this a good area? Is this a bad area? And I hate to say it because it sounds lazy, but no, the most areas are pretty dang good. So we provided a full education package essentially for them to understand the market. What are each of the submarkets? What do those kind of returns look like? So that's one of the pieces you got to have. Then we're also going to go ahead and provide at least 3 different property management companies for them to work with and contact. So that's the second thing. So education and property management. Third thing is insurance, because that is such a large chunk of the expense ratio. And you can't just go out there and use, or at least we advise against it, State Farm insurance or something like that. You need to find a commercial style insurance company that gets you the best rates and terms. So that's the third piece. And then you've got to have a lender. You've got to have, most of the time in the space we work in, which is a class A, B, or C, but it has some kind of value add component. So you've got to have a local lender that knows the market, wants to lend on it. It's not going to do a whole bunch of silliness with loan requirements. So we've got lenders all lined up for this into Kansas City, and they'll help you obviously with the rates and terms, et cetera. So we really provide this kind of upfront package to them to get comfortable with the market, know their boots on the ground here. And if they're already here, maybe improve their boots on the ground and really get them started on the Kansas City market and bought into every single piece of the economic activity that's going on here.
Yeah, that's fantastic, especially with those pieces, right? You're talking about the education, the property management, having the right insurance. It can't just be the cookie cutter versions of all that. I always been a firm believer in education, no matter what like niche or investment class you want to get into, knowing about it is so important, especially knowing the market that you want to invest in, right? You're talking about people that are investing in Kansas City. Like, you need to know Kansas City. You can't just say, oh, I found some stuff online. This looks good. The numbers work. And I'm just going to buy it. And then it turns out, you find out later on that you can't even rent in that area. So that's definitely super important, man. So I appreciate you pointing that out. All right, Alex, let me see. I want to ask you this too, because your evolution going from when you started and got out of the corporate world, 15 years is a long time, right? To be in corporate America and then deciding to just jump ship and bet on yourself, right? So I want to ask you this. What is your why? What made you want to go out on your own and be an entrepreneur?
Good question, as always. Why do we do the things that we do? And there is a couple major points. For me, it was untapped income potential. Okay. When you're working for yourself, you can make as much or as little as you want. Now, of course, you're always confined by what market you're in. But that to me was a big piece. I felt like I was a pretty high performer at my corporate job. And I had a lot of ideas of how to like incentivize myself, how I could make more money. But looking back on it now, of course, hindsight's 2020, you can see all these little points where I don't want to say blocked those. That's not quite fair, but it was like, it doesn't fit into really the business model. And so that was number one to me, is untapped or uncorked income potential. And then the other thing is, I really needed a sense of accomplishment. I felt like I always wanted to accomplish things. So I wanted to get things done and not just do something for somebody else. So maybe I'm a little selfish in that way, but I love getting deals done. I like getting things across the finish line, never giving up on things. If you're in the corporate world, you've got all these projects and maybe some of them are amazing and maybe some of them don't work out. But when you work for yourself, you really only get paid when things get done or sold or produced.
When you perform.
Or when you perform. Yeah. You can't just sit back and take half a day off and make the same amount of money. Now, you can do that occasionally, but every second, every minute really matters. in how you use your time. And that was really fulfilling to me, was coming into working for yourself is every minute you wanted to spend, you could spend it on yourself in some way, whether it's improving your business or improving your relationships with others in the community or whatever the case may be. But it was all about, you and helping you grow.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And everybody has their reasons for why they do what they do, but truly knowing what your why is what's going to help you guide yourself and keep you on course, right? Because you can always sit there and focus back and remember why it is you're doing what you're doing. And that's why I love a question like that, man, because it really just makes you think about, am I really giving this? Am I really putting my best self forward in what I'm doing today? And I like what you were talking about with when you're on your own, right? If you sit there and you say, I'm just going to take half the day and go watch TV or whatever, how much that can really affect what you're doing. If you're on a roll and everything and things are going great, sure, you might have time to sit there and take half a day off. But honestly, when you're on your own, when you take that off time, there's nobody else working for you, right? There's no one else doing what you can do for yourself better than you. So I think, yeah, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate that answer. Okay. I definitely would like to transition this into what I call now the final round. I know you have a hard stop soon. I want to make sure I can get you to where you got to be next. But in this portion of the podcast, I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. It helps us get into the mind of Alex Olson when he's under pressure and having to deal with some pretty tough things, which I know doing what you do, you've been put in tough situations. So I'm pretty excited to see where this goes. So if you're ready, we'll get this party started.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, Alex. All right. Throughout your time, I'm sure you've had plenty, but I would like to know what you believe is the biggest mistake you've ever made in real estate.
Biggest mistake in real estate was all related to the Airbnb world. Okay. When I talked about at the beginning, I bought 4 Airbnb houses. They were all very large houses. They took a lot of money to furnish. They took a lot of effort to manage. You don't think about, okay, yeah, I'll furnish this place and I'll buy all this furniture. It'll last forever. A couch doesn't last forever when it just doesn't. So then instead of you buy a $500 couch, now that broke, instantly you got another $500 you got to spend. Airbnb, yeah, sure, they might cover it sometimes, but usually they don't. And the reason why I made that mistake was because I was pushing myself thinking that, hey, look, this is going to get me out of my corporate job. Because remember, that was before I had transitioned out of my corporate job into real estate. I was like, man, please, I need something that's going to get me out of this corporate job. Oh, here, there's an Airbnb thing. Oh my gosh, everybody's going to love these locations and houses. And what can go wrong? The pandemic hit. And so I put a lot of eggs in that basket, and a lot of money in that basket. And I relied too much. I mean, location's everything. Don't get me wrong. But I relied too much on the location aspect of those properties. And an advisor at the time was like, hey, yeah, Airbnb's going to kill it. So I got oversold. I got oversold really on my emotions of getting out of corporate world. And so then that made me buy all these properties and buy all these furnitures and furnishings and look amazing. And at the end of the day, it really didn't get me any further than it actually took me back a long ways.
Wow. Yeah, I appreciate your transparency there, because a lot of times that's not stuff that's easy to talk about. And I feel like a lot of us have been in situations like that where we feel like we put all of our eggs in one basket. And what really sucks about that is when you drop the basket, most or all of the eggs break. So it's you put yourself in a tough situation. So definitely appreciate that, man. All right, Alex. So the next question, these all kind of tie into each other. So you'll see how this is going. But what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first got started?
So one of the things, yeah, that's a great question, because when I first got started in real estate, I thought I wanted to come into a property when I bought a property where I was just going to use my own money. So I wanted as little a loan as possible on it, in terms of there's no repairs needed. This property's perfect. Any repairs that are needed, I'll just pay for it out of my own pocket. That was my mistake going into it, buying it. I don't want to say as is, but buying it that the property is working and performing. So now every single person that comes to us, I say, hey, look, we need to find, a value add component to this So this particular property, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. It's got 2 very old air conditioner units. The outside needs to be sided. Let's go to the bank and get what's called a rehab loan as part of that acquisition. And oh, by the way, we can do an as completed appraisal. So that way it all pencils out from a financing standpoint. So if I would have known that, I would have accelerated a lot of my properties, would have been a lot nicer, a lot faster, and a lot higher rent. That would have been really nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely. These are the things we learn as we go. And part of that piece that makes you better at your craft, right? It's the education that comes from that. Yeah, definitely appreciate that,
I would have never known that. And now I'm really happy. I'm really happy I learned that, because it's like an extra exclamation point when I'm working with buyers. Say, hey, look, let's make sure we get a rehab loan as part of this deal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Hey, and again, that's something that you learn over time. For those that are listening right now, they're getting this information for free, which is fantastic.
Right.
All right, Alex. So the next question, and this also has to do with newbies, right? So do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today?
If you're starting today in real estate and you live in a somewhat of a cash flow market, actually even not, really just anywhere, the best advice I can give to you is to buy a fourplex, okay? Live in one of the units, rent out the other 3 units, and if you're single, rent out the other bedrooms in your unit, and you would have a cash flowing machine, because you're getting that property for very little money down, maybe 3%, 3.5%, 4%. And that whole entire property just has so much income coming in on it. It's going to pay for, of course, a mortgage, your rent. You're going to have so much equity built into that property that your wealth building journey, which is really kind of at the end of the day, retirement, is going to be well ahead of anybody else, and would have been well ahead of me at that time of just buying that fourplex, getting the first time home buyer or the FHA kind of loan on the fourplex, renting out all the units, and continuing to do that until you can no longer stand having roommates.
Yeah, that might put a fire under you too, if you can no longer stand them anyway. Okay, appreciate that. All right, Alex, the final question of the final round is, and this is just an opinion-based one, it's an easy one. Do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate-related book or podcast, or both?
I have a book that I often recommend, and I have a very particular reason why I recommend it, not just because it's an entertaining book, because anybody can write, I'll tell you the name of it here in a second, anybody can write a book and tell you all these great things that you need to do, but I learn best by real examples. And so my favorite book is Am I Too Subtle by Sam Zell. And it's a real life account. Sam Zell is a billionaire real estate investor. He essentially invented REITs, real estate investing trusts. And so he goes through his life journey, and there's, of course, learning lessons in there, life lessons, all that kind of good stuff. But it's his real experience that was, he's not just some schmuck that says he's rich. This is his only book I think he's written. And so he likes to go out there and tout his experiences. And it's just a really good book. If you go through there, you can see all of the ways and the methods to invest in real estate. And you also get a real experience in that.
Awesome. I definitely appreciate that recommendation. I wrote that one down. That is not one I had on my list. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Alex, this has been fantastic, but I do have one more question for you. And this is actually the most important question of all. Okay. So for those that have been listening to this so far and thinking to themselves, man, I want to learn more about the 1031 exchange, or I want to learn more about the Kansas City market, or, hey, I want to know more about Alex Olson. Where can people find more information about you and what you offer? Do you have a website you could share with us, social media accounts, anything like that?
Yeah, you can head over to my website, exchangecre.com. That's with an X, like you can see this big X back here. Exchangecre.com. Email me, alex@exchangecre.com. But of course, I'm all over LinkedIn. I post, 3-4 times a week on real estate investing, 1031 exchanges, the Kansas City market. You can find me in my picture, Alex Olson. So I love talking real estate and the Kansas City market for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So Alex, we are going to have all those links in the show notes to make it easy for people to find you. So if you're listening, you can copy and paste or click away. Just don't do it while you're driving. I always put that disclaimer out there. But Alex, this has been a real treat, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on, chat with me today, and provide so much value to my audience. I genuinely appreciate it.
I loved it, man. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And hey, to my listeners, I want to thank all of you for joining me and our special guest, Alex Olson, on the Average Joe Finances podcast today. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Alex. Aloha from Hawaii, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.
Thanks for listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast, your source for beating debt, saving money, and investing. Learn more at averagejoefinances.com.